This presentation summarizes the training impact mapping activities that I have done through the Regional Training Center of the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. The presentation starts with an introduction to the subject, then gives a list of the training material covered and a list of trainees from the different sectors of the ministry, and 10 follow-up assignments that I designed for the trainees to prepare them for mapping their daily activities with the contents of the training material. Then we go to the subject of mapping engineering activities with subjects and examples from different Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation sectors. Then a section on the detailed steps for training impact presentation to be developed by the trainees and presented in front of their superiors. Then I will end my presentation with some concluding remarks. These are the subjects showing the topic itself and how the mode of presentation. Some of them were PowerPoint presentations, some of them were demos and practice, discussion with trainees, and some parts were videos to be watched and discussed. Here are the list of names of the original group of people who attended the training, and some of them are selected for making the training impact presentation. And what's interesting, they come from different sectors from the ministry at different geographical locations, from middle of Egypt, from South Egypt, from the Delta, from Sinai, from west of Egypt, and from sectors like the horizontal expansion sector and barrages and regulators sectors, and even the center of training, the MENA branch. The assignments I gave to the students were 10 assignments. The first one shows them what is the purpose of the exercise and what is required from them, and then a series of 9 assignments trying to let the trainees remember what they covered in the training course that was called Quantitative and Qualitative Data some months ago. Then statistical functions in Excel, the use of pivot table, types of data and charts, and chart common mistakes and examples with solutions, and more on graphics. I concentrate on graphics and infographics in particular because this is the tool they are going to use to present their everyday data in a different way. Then we had a presentation of Hans Rosling about his Gapminder software and moving bubbles, and in activity 9 I wanted them to use the updated version of Gapminder and to use the 5 options of presenting data. Then the performance behavior exercise is a videotape about the use of Excel to do a performance behavior chart to be applied by the trainees if their data shows some fluctuations, either daily or monthly, and present them graphically. What I do here, I give the statement of the activity and my suggested solution. The activity starts by asking, where do you work? What are your activities? What are the subjects covered in the course? And they do the matching exercise and give some examples. And the last activity, called presentation, is a preparation of a 15-minute speech to be delivered to their superiors to make sure that impact of training affected their daily activities. Here is my own matching exercise. The list I have shown you about the trainees, I put the sectors they come from, and I tried as an initial exercise to connect the sectors where they come from the ministry, and some of the subjects I covered in my courses. For examples, I found that licenses is has certain start date and finish date. Therefore, we use Gantt chart, and counting the number of vessels going through locks is an interesting exercise of fluctuations, daily and monthly fluctuations, and how we use the behavior chart with some statistical inferences to present the data. Activity 2 is a question about asking the trainees to write in their own wording the definitions of types of quantitative data, qualitative data, collection methods, and what is linear regression and what is time series analysis. And this is the definitions. We can just here, like for example, go for linear regression, a statistical method, modeling the relationship between a dependent variable and one, simple or more multiple independent variables by fitting a linear equation. And time series analysis is analyzing sequential data points collected over time to identify trends, seasonality, and forecast future values, used for stock prices, weather data, and of course the data related to the ministry. Here is part 2 of the same activity, which is a matrix question, and I invented this type of question where trainees will click the correct intersection between the data description and the type of data, quantitative versus qualitative, and the same thing for data collection. And this is the solution. Activity 3 is about statistical functions in Excel, and there are 3 questions. One about functions count, count A, count blank, count if, and count ifs. And the second one is about average, mode, and median. And the third one is about the difference between box plot and blocks and whisker plot and violin plot. Here is the definition. I will just select some of them. COUNTIF is a statistical function that counts the number of cells within a range that meets the given criteria. And for example, mode is a compatibility function that returns the most common value in a data set. And here is the part differentiating between box and whisker plot and violin plot. In addition to the infograph, we say box plots show data points outside 1.5 multiplied by the interquartile range as outliers above or below the whisker, whereas violin plot shows the whole range of data. Activity 4 is about pivot table, and the first part is asking them to write the steps used to construct the pivot table and pivot chart, and we apply this to data related to the Nile Basin countries for the green and blue water, and the other exercise for the livestock. Here is the original table, the 11 Nile Basin countries, and the columns are blue water, green water, total water, dependency ratio, livestock, and livestock consumption in billion cubic meter per year. Here is the pivot table extraction of blue and green water, and the stacked bar chart showing for each country how much blue water and how much green water. And I repeated the exercise for the livestock. in terms of some of the livestock heads and the water consumption. And because of the difference in orders of magnitude of data, I used a logarithmic scale and a clustered bar chart. Here is activity 5, and this depends on the lecture on the types of data and its connection to the correct suitable chart. And they are supposed, it's another matrix exercise of my creation, and they have to check the cells that show the correct intersection between the type of data and the type of chart. And this is the solution. Activity 6 is chart common mistakes, and I want them from the lecture to remember an example of common mistakes related to type of charts, related to y-axis, and related to frequency curves, and these are my own categorization in my lecture. And this is line versus scatter, showing that the graph at the bottom is correct and the one on top is not correct. This is primary and secondary data axes, and they are affected by different orders of magnitude, and this is why we need a secondary y-axis. The third shows how the histogram is working by using a certain function to determine the bin width. But in the example in this chart, this histogram does not really, even if we edit the bin ranges, does not give us a good idea, especially if the data is about the grades of students. Therefore, we use a frequency array function of Excel to be able to show the frequency curve at the bottom of the slide. Activity 7 has to do with examples with solutions. It's an elaborate lecture about different types of data and corresponding charts that needs deep thinking. And this has to be this beautiful exercise about the agreements around the Nile Basin, between the Nile Basin countries and the city, and they are asked to make a timeline. This timeline is shown here, where the year is shown and the type of agreement is written, and it shows us how we started in 1929 and end in 2015 by we start with agreement and we end with the declaration between Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia. Activity 8 is another question that needs even more deep thinking, relating the room size in square meters with capacity of air conditioning in kilojoule per hour and estimated horsepower rating. The important thing in this exercise is, in addition to find a suitable graph, they have to write a caption, because the same data can be presented to give different messages. Therefore, I wanted them not only to connect the data to the graph, but also to the caption, which articulates the message. Here is my proposal, showing at the y-axis the horsepower and the x-axis, using a stacked bar chart, show the range of capacity and the room size. The reason I was able to do that is because the numbers allows me to do this. But if the numbers are not as easy to manipulate like this time, I should have used a different way of presentation. Here is activity 9 about the Hans Rosling video and his Gapminder software. And in the software, the updated version not only has the moving bubble charts, but it adds a map chart, a lines chart, a mountains chart, and ranking chart. And what I asked them to do is to use their own data to create 5 different charts from the available options for the Y and X axis. And I did the exercise myself, but I used data related to water management. Like here, I used the water, and I used the renewable water in different countries. Here is the map, and I use also an indicator that has to do with water. Let us see what is the indicator here. It says this is water withdrawal at different countries, where the circle shows the amount of water and the x-axis shows the timeline, and this is a snapshot of year 2004. And I repeated the similar exercise for the line chart and the mountain chart and the ranking charts, and all are data related to water management. This is the last activity. It's a beautiful video by this man who talks about statistical data analysis with Excel made easy, and the purpose of the video is to show how he designed a performance behavior chart for timeline. And this is my solution. I repeated his video, but I didn't use data from water management. I used the same data he used to produce the same charts that he produced in his video. Now we move to a different subject, which is the initial exercise done by the trainees through 3 sessions online to prepare them for their final presentation. And this is the engineer who processes drainage network, and he shows the construction progress in terms of the area served, and it says the total area served and what has been constructed so far. Therefore, I used a clustered bar chart, and I used the name of the drains as y-axis. Another example, you see that the original table is done for paper report, and it needs a lot of processing to convert it into a database that allows me to use the pivot table and pivot chart. Here is another type for an engineer reporting on the licenses given to the farmers here, and each license starts at certain date and ends at certain date. I use again chart-like chart using date axis as x-axis, and uses a clustered a stacked bar chart to show for each of the farmers the start and finish of his license. This is also an engineer that has to do with the violations done by people, and they are this is the progress of violation. There are 3 types. Some of them, the first one in Arabic, it says تم رد الشيء. It means things has been returned back to its original state. The other تمت الإزالة means we removed the violation completely, and the third one is we couldn't. It was violation could not be removed because there was some problems in removing the violation. And because this is the total progress of certain geographical location, I used a pie chart. Here is these are this data about an engineer who works in the Delta and supervises construction and maintenance of barrages and regulators. And in this chart, the engineer shows where certain barrages and regulators in the delta, the date of construction, and we start with the delta Damietta branch about the year 1902, and the last one was the Salihiyya, or the regulator and lock of called Syriacuse, the new Syriacuse, and it was constructed in the year 2009. Here is the engineer that counts the number of vessels that goes through the locks in Asyut, Nag Hammadi, and Isna, and of course I used the behavior process chart to show if passing of these vessels through the locks changes by months or seasonally, and we use the behavior process chart. This slide showing what is needed from the engineers to make the presentation on the training impact. Their presentation should include the typical paper table showing how difficult to extract information for decision maker, and part of the training material related to their specific application, and to make a demonstration of the tool they used and the example they selected, and one of them suggested making a video clip showing the steps that she followed in Excel to convert the table into a database, and to convert the database into a pivot table, and take the data from the pivot table and plot it using the pivot chart. And the last point in the presentation is to explain to the audience how the new presentation tool is used, helps the decision maker, and saves a lot of effort and time. This is the example of Excel table for paper report. As you can see, it has some color coding. There is no field names are in different rows, and also a lot of cells are combined together, which is very difficult to process. Therefore, we need to clean this and convert it. And these are some of the steps from my experience and from the discussion with the trainees. What are the steps we need to convert a table to a database? We have to remove the print page breaks using normal view, unmerge cells horizontally and vertically, and unhide cells, and align all text horizontally. Use only one row for column titles. Remove totals calculated manually, and remove horizontal titles in merged cells, and remove distracting coloring of cells because they did it for the normal reporting, and edit the text in similar cells to be identical, because if there is any typo or an extra space, this will disturb the extraction of the pivot table. This is the database of this table after being cleaned, and this is how we used the pivot table. And according to the message we like to send to the decision maker, we decide which field goes to filters, which field goes to columns. I'm going to elaborate on this. We are 4 fields here: filters, columns, values, and rows. And by doing that, I choose a donut chart here to compare the this is the violations. No, these are some of the projects executed for protection. Some of them, I will translate the Arabic here, some of them protection from flash floods, construction of a metal fence, construction of a bridge on abutments, and construction of a bridge on piles, and protection of the residential area that is located on the lined canals. Of course, this is for certain geographical irrigation area. This is why I used a donut chart. This is also another graph, but the data here are for 3 different governorates: Aswan, Luxor, and Kina, and these are the construction costs in Egyptian pounds. My concluding remarks that the tables that are designed at the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation sectors, are designed for printed paper reports. To process data in table, it must be formatted in the form of a simple database with records as rows and field titles as columns, and we use a pivot table. Needs some experience to know which title or which field goes to filter and which goes to column and which goes to value and row, and this needs some training. Therefore, the directors and managers should change the way they evaluate data to accept the reports in the new forms in terms of reduced tables and charts using the pivot chart option in Excel. Therefore, this training, in my opinion, is a first step to change the mindset of the way engineers look at reports.